Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, Beneath Their Skin. Let the shadows speak.
Part 1. The Pulse Beneath the Prairie. I first heard the noise on a Wednesday. It came through the soil, not the air. A low, trembling hum beneath the floorboards of our field station, like the prairie itself was holding its breath. It wasn't a vibration, not exactly. More like a presence, something ancient turning over in the dark. The others said it was the new geothermal drill, but I knew better. The Osage Research Initiative had been digging deep into old territory, a former native burial plateau outside Pawhuska, Oklahoma. Officially, we were there to study microbial life under thermal extremes. Unofficially, we were funded by a private defense contractor that never used names in their emails. Just acronyms. Just continue extraction. I was the station biologist and my name's Jonah Vale. That night, my shift in Lab 2 ran late. The soil samples we'd pulled from the deep borehole, over 4,000 feet down, had started to behave strangely. When I placed the slide under the microscope, I saw something move. It didn't swim like a microbe or skitter like a mite. It pulsed, slowly, rhythmically. A shimmer of gray flesh with no discernible body, no nucleus or organelles. And then it split like it knew I was watching. I pulled back from the scope and rubbed my eyes. It was almost 3 a.m. The lab lights flickered. Not like a power issue, but like the bulbs were holding their breath too. I told myself I was just exhausted. Then something knocked from under the floor. 3 dull thumps. Not mechanical, not seismic, like fists on wood. I backed away from the lab bench and nearly tripped over the cart of petri dishes. The thumps didn't come again, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. I should have left right then. Walked into the night and never looked back. Instead, I locked the lab and went outside to smoke. The air was warm for late March. Too warm. The prairie stretched for miles in every direction, tall dry grass swaying like breath. No wind, no sounds of crickets or birds. Just the faint static buzz that sometimes came from the outpost's antenna, which was odd because I hadn't powered the receiver on in days. My phone buzzed. One text. Sarah, 1:12 a.m. You feel it too, don't you? I stared at the screen. My fingers froze over the reply. Sarah Clark was a systems technician here, and my ex-fiancé. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, not since she left without warning, leaving behind only her station badge and a looped voicemail saying, "Don't dig too deep." I hadn't heard from her since. And now she was texting me from, "Where?" I typed back, "Where are you?" No reply, just more static from the dish. Then it began to snow. Except it wasn't snow. Not really. I held out my hand and watched as fine gray dust fell from the sky, swirling like ash. It settled over the research trailer's railings and clung to the grass like pollen. It had weight. It smelled faintly metallic like blood. The wind picked up for the first time that night, and I could hear the hum beneath the ground growing louder, almost melodic, like something beneath the earth was calling. That's when the screaming started. I dropped the cigarette and bolted back into the station. The hallway was dark. Emergency lights glowed red. I could hear someone pounding on the glass in Lab 1. It was Cam, the geology intern. His skin was flushed red, his eyes wide and unfocused. He was clawing at his neck. I ran to the door and shouted through the glass, "Cam, what the hell's happening?" He didn't respond, just kept digging his nails into his collarbone until I saw blood. Then he looked up at me, eyes milky, voice flat. They're beneath our skin. And then he collapsed, twitching. I didn't wait. I triggered the internal quarantine protocol and sealed Lab 1. I ran to the comms bay, fingers trembling as I tried to hail base command in St. Louis. No signal. The screen only showed looping lines of corrupted code. The static grew louder, now crackling through the vents like a voice trying to form. I watched it crawl down the walls, a shimmer of dust moving as if on instinct. I backed away from the console. My phone buzzed again. Sarah, 1:32 a.m. It's not a plague. It's a signal. Don't listen to it. I dropped the phone, and from somewhere behind me, I heard a voice whisper, Jonah. But I was alone. Part 2. A warning in the static. Jonah. That voice was hers. Not similar. Not close. It was Sarah's exact voice, whispering from behind me in the dark. But I was alone in the comms bay. I turned around slowly, every hair on my arm standing up. Nothing but the red emergency lights and the black hum of dead screens. Sarah? I whispered. No answer. I grabbed my phone off the floor. The dust was now sticking to its surface like static cling. My lock screen was flickering, her name still at the top of the last message thread. But now the screen was glitching. The words she sent had begun to shift. It's not a plague. It's a signal. Don't listen to it. The last line was distorting. Letters reshuffling like they were being rearranged by something inside the phone. Don't listen to it became, don't trust her. I blinked. Then it flicked back. I stared for a long moment, my chest rising and falling faster than I could control. And then my ears started to bleed. It began with a high-pitched whine, like microphone feedback pushed into ultrasound range. The kind of frequency you don't hear so much as feel, behind your eyes, in the bones of your teeth. I stumbled back, pressing my palms to my ears. Blood smeared down the sides of my neck, hot and thick. My vision blurred. The comms room began to stutter. Lights pulsing offbeat, monitors flashing fragments of faces, landscapes I didn't recognize. Not Earth. Too many moons. Mountains like spines. Oceans that bled sideways. I saw Sarah. She was floating. Eyes open. Mouth closed. She didn't look dead. She looked awake. I came to some time later, lying on the tile floor, shirt soaked in blood and sweat. The sound was gone. The flickering screens were dark. My phone was dead. I pulled myself up using the console and stared at the blackened window of the comms monitor. In it, I saw my own reflection. My ears were still bleeding, but what caught my eye was the thin red line crawling down from beneath my collar. I pulled the neckline of my shirt down. There, under my skin, something was moving. A ripple, just beneath the surface, like a small centipede crawling inside me. I vomited into the corner of the room. I needed to find the others. If anyone was still alive, I had to warn them about the sound, about what it did, about what it was. But when I stepped into the hallway, the station was quiet, dead quiet. No hum of the generator, no flicker of lights, no sound of vents, no cries, no motion. Then, from the far end of the hall, came a scratching, like nails on aluminum. Fast, random, desperate. I approached slowly, heartbeat hammering. When I turned the corner near the genetics lab, I stopped cold. There was a man huddled against the wall. His name was Dr. Dennis Meeks, a xenobiologist, or rather had been. What was left of him barely looked human. His skin was covered in boils, all pulsing in time with that same rhythm I felt under my own flesh. He was still alive, barely. One eye was swollen shut. The other blinked erratically as he whispered a single phrase again and again. "They're tuning us." I dropped to my knees beside him. "What? Who's tuning us, Dennis?" His eye found mine. Blood bubbled at his lips. "They sent the note through the bones of the earth," he wheezed. "They're not from the sky. They're from below." Dennis died before he could explain more, but his words stuck with me. Not from the sky, from below. I thought about the borehole, 4,000 feet down into the shale. I thought about the samples, the signal, the tremors, the dust. It wasn't an invasion. It was a broadcast, and someone was listening back. I had to get out. I needed answers, and I knew the only place that might still have them. The deep lab, level -3, beneath the station, where Sarah used to work, where they kept the classified biomaterials, where the signal had first been detected. I moved fast. The halls were darker now, coated in a thin film of that strange dust. It glittered like pollen, but left rust-colored streaks on the walls where it clung. I passed the dorm corridor. Doors hung ajar, silence behind them. I didn't look in. I didn't want to see bones. When I reached the elevator shaft, I nearly turned back. The control panel was busted, melted from the inside out. But the maintenance ladder was intact. As I started to descend into the dark, my fingers brushing against cold rungs, I heard it again. The voice, this time clearer, this time louder. "Jonah, please, don't come down here." It was Sarah. But something in her voice was wrong. Too calm, too symmetrical, like a recording set on a loop. And I was pretty sure she was already dead. Part 3. She Who Waits. The ladder was cold, colder than it should have been. Each rung felt like it had been buried in ice, or something worse. I climbed down slowly, counting every step like it might be my last. The air grew denser with every foot, thick with dust and something else, something that buzzed just beyond the edge of thought. Like a whisper in a language I didn't know I understood. After 2 stories, the walls changed. Concrete gave way to something smoother, black like obsidian, warm to the touch. This wasn't part of the original facility. This was added later. Whatever they found down here, they built around it. And then the ladder ended. I dropped the last few feet and landed in total darkness. But the moment my boots hit the floor, the lights turned on. Not fluorescence, bioluminescence. Soft amber veins glowed along the walls, like pulsing capillaries under skin. The air was humming now, and I could feel it vibrating in my teeth. The hum wasn't constant. It rose and fell like breathing, or speech. I was standing inside a living tunnel, and I wasn't alone. "Jonah." The voice came from the far end of the corridor. I froze. That voice wasn't recorded. It was live. I walked slowly, boots crunching over what looked like ash and cracked bone. The walls pulsed slightly as I passed, like they were aware of me, observing me. The corridor ended in a wide chamber, roughly circular, ceiling lost in shadow. And in the center, sitting calmly beneath a shattered console and surrounded by glowing data pads, was Sarah, or what looked like her. She turned her head and smiled. Her eyes were still the same, blue, piercing, but there was something strange in the way they didn't blink. "Hey," she said softly, like no time had passed. "You came." My throat tightened. "Sarah?" She nodded. "It's me." I took a step forward. "You texted me. You warned me." "I did," she said, standing up. Her movements were smooth, too smooth. "I thought you were dead?" She tilted her head. "Not exactly. What the hell happened down here?" Sarah didn't answer at first. Instead, she walked over to one of the black walls and pressed her palm against it. The wall shimmered, shifted, but beyond it was something. A mass. Not machinery, not organic. A fusion of the two, pulsing with light and heat and rhythm, like a heart made from wires and bone. "They call it the Enoch root," she said. "It came from beneath the shale. We didn't drill into it, Jonah. It grew up to meet us. I stared, breathless. You said it's not a plague, I whispered. That it's a signal. It is. A memory. A command. A seed. She turned toward me. They don't spread through blood or breath. They spread through understanding. Through attention. I took a step back. Sarah, what did it do to you? She smiled again, wider now. Nothing I didn't allow. I reached for the emergency beacon on my belt, but my fingers wouldn't move. I looked down. The skin on my hands had begun to ripple, ever so subtly, like the surface of a pond disturbed by an unseen current. Sarah stepped closer, her face still beautiful, still familiar, but wrong. They didn't conquer us, she said. We opened the door. She reached out and touched my chest, right over my heartbeat, and I felt it stutter, like it was sinking to something else. I fought it at first, she whispered, but there's no need to be afraid. They don't want to hurt us. They want to use us, become us. I looked at her, eyes wide with terror. You're not Sarah. She paused, then nodded. Not anymore. I turned and ran, back through the tunnel, back toward the ladder. My limbs felt sluggish, like they were pushing through molasses. The walls pulsed faster now, redder, angry. Behind me, I heard her footsteps, not running, just walking, confident. Come. You can't outrun it, she called. You heard it. That's all it takes. I reached the base of the ladder and grabbed the first rung, but my hand slipped. My fingers weren't fingers anymore. They were beginning to split, divide, writhing beneath the skin. I screamed and climbed anyway, up into the dark, up toward whatever was left of the surface. And below me, her voice echoed, You already belong to them, Jonah. Part 4. Blood in the Firelight. I don't remember how I reached the top. 1 minute I was scrambling up the maintenance shaft, fingers bleeding, vision swimming. The next I was outside, gasping in the night air, slamming the hatch shut behind me like it would matter. It wouldn't. The stars above were wrong. That's the first thing I noticed. The sky, pitch black, but the constellations weren't in the right places. Orion's belt was gone. The Big Dipper melted into a spiral I didn't recognize. And the moon, there were two. One white, one red. I fell to my knees in the dust and retched. The world had changed, or I had. The station was glowing, not with light, with something deeper. Like the walls were alive, pumping with faint red veins that pulsed under the aluminum siding. I crawled toward the dorm wing, sticking to the shadows. I needed a weapon. I needed to get the hell out. The hallway was dim. Emergency backup power had kicked in, casting everything in harsh, flickering orange. I stepped over the bodies of people I once knew, except they weren't quite dead. Their limbs twitched. Their mouths moved silently. Some of them were trying to hum. That same slow, dreadful rhythm. The signal. I found a crowbar in the maintenance closet and made my way toward the storage bay. My plan, if it even counted as one, was to find a vehicle, anything with wheels, and drive north until the road vanished or my mind did. But then I saw the fire. It was coming from the mess hall, a bonfire burning high and bright, casting flickering shadows across the walls like puppets on strings. And gathered around it were the survivors, or at least the ones who hadn't fully changed yet. They were singing, low guttural tones, a melody with no melody, repeating lines I couldn't understand, not in English, not in any human tongue. I should have kept moving, but I saw her. Not Sarah. Emily Tran. She'd been one of the new hires, a data linguist brought in to help decode the underground pulses. She was smart, kind, normal. And now she stood barefoot in front of the flames, her eyes wide and glossy, her skin covered in red webbing. She was still holding her ID badge. I approached slowly, crowbar behind my back. "Emily," I whispered. "Hey, it's me, Jonah." She didn't react at first, just kept swaying with the others. Then, suddenly she turned her head and smiled. "Jonah," she said softly, "you heard it, didn't you?" I froze. Her voice was normal, too normal, like someone imitating a memory. "They're almost done molding you," she continued. "Soon you'll be able to join." "Join what?" I asked, throat dry. She gestured to the fire. "They're inside the flame, waiting. We feed them what we were, and in return they show us what we could be." Her voice cracked at the end just slightly, like something inside was breaking through the seams. I stepped back. "Emily, listen to me. You're sick. We all are. But we can fight it." "There's nothing to fight," she said and stepped closer. Her eyes were bleeding now, thin streams of red running down her cheeks like tears. Her arms opened. "I can show you what Sarah showed me." I raised the crowbar, and for a split second I hesitated. She looked calm, peaceful, happy. And then I remembered what was inside me, crawling, multiplying. I swung. The metal hit her shoulder and she staggered, not from pain, from surprise. The crowd around the fire turned in unison, faces half melted, skin pulsing, eyes glowing like embers. They didn't scream, they just hummed, and they began to walk toward me. I ran, out of the mess hall, down the corridor, toward the garage. The doors were closed, sealed with what looked like organic matter, grown over the hinges like scar tissue. I hacked at it with the crowbar until my arms ached. Behind me, the humming grew louder. That song, that infection. It wasn't in their blood, it was in their minds, and it was trying to get into mine. When the doors finally gave way, I stumbled into the vehicle bay and slammed the emergency release. The only truck still intact was a field runner, half gas, half electric. I climbed in, jammed the key into the ignition, and prayed. The engine whined, then roared to life. The garage doors cracked open just as the first of the infected reached the bay. They didn't run, didn't scream. They just reached out their hands, smiling, like they were inviting me to understand. I floored the gas, and as I tore out into the prairie night, dust and ash flying behind me, I heard her voice again. "Sarah." But this time it came from inside my own skull. "You can't drive away from your thoughts, Jonah." Part 5. Hollow Shells. The road out of the facility wasn't really a road anymore. It was cracked, warped, overrun by prairie grass and something else, something gray and fibrous like veins rupturing through the pavement. The headlights caught it at odd angles. It shimmered, moved. The whole world felt like it was breathing, and I was inside its lungs. I drove fast, not knowing where I was going. Just north, away from the facility, away from her, from it. But it was in me. I could feel it now, not just crawling under my skin, but talking. Not in words, in suggestions, in dreams. The first town I came to was a place called Marrowfield. Population maybe 600. At least it used to be. Now it was quiet. Too quiet. No lights. No dogs. No sounds of televisions, air conditioners, or music. Just static. I stopped the truck on the edge of Main Street and stepped out slowly, crowbar in hand. The air was thick with dust. Not normal dust. This was fine, clinging, nearly alive. It tasted metallic. It itched. The storefront still stood, windows intact, but behind the glass were statues. At first I thought they were mannequins. Pale, stiff, unmoving. But as I got closer, I realized they were people. Frozen in place. Eyes open. Mouths slightly ajar. Breathing but shallow. Their chests rose and fell in perfect rhythm. All synced to the same invisible metronome. I waved my hand in front of one woman's face, young, maybe 19, apron still tied from her shift at the diner. She didn't blink, she didn't flinch, but her lips moved, just once. Join. I stumbled back, and the others began to speak too, one by one, not in unison, but overlapping, cascading. Join us, join her, join it. Their eyes began to bleed, and I ran. I hid in the shell of a laundromat, crouched behind a row of rusting dryers, watching through a broken window. None of them moved from their spots. They just stood there, swaying, murmuring, like wind chimes with tongues. I checked my phone again. No signal, just a blank gray screen. And then a voicemail. Timestamp 3:17 a.m. from Sarah. I hadn't heard it come in. I pressed play, hands shaking. Jonah, you're fighting it. That's good. It means you're still in there. But it's going to start replacing things soon. Your memories, your choices, your voice. You'll think it's you, but it's not. And we don't need you awake for what's coming. The message ended. I stared at the phone, barely breathing. Then I looked at my hands. There was a piece of paper in my left hand. I hadn't picked up anything. I didn't remember finding it. It was torn from a lab notebook. Sarah's handwriting, unmistakable. Just 6 words. If you forget her, you lose. I couldn't stay in Marrowfield. I couldn't sleep. So I drove. Mile after mile, through towns just like it, husks of life filled with walking reminders of what used to be people. Churches turned into hives. Billboards rewritten in strange spirals. All of them humming. All of them waiting. I don't know how long I drove. Eventually I stopped checking the map. There was no direction anymore. Just escape or delay. I pulled over near a rest stop somewhere in Nebraska. At least that's where I think I was. The sign was melted. The stars were wrong again. And I was starting to forget simple things. My father's name. My middle name. What my own voice used to sound like. I screamed just to hear it. But it came out garbled. Like playback from a dying tape deck. I curled up in the front seat of the truck, shivering. I clutched Sarah's note to my chest. If you forget her, you lose. But I couldn't remember her laugh. Not anymore. I woke up at dawn to tapping on the window. A child stood there, alone, maybe 8 years old. She smiled. Thin lips, pale eyes, nose bleeding slightly. In her hand, she held a walkie-talkie, and through it I heard a voice, not hers, mine. Jonah, come home. It's better now. We're better now. The pain stops when you stop fighting. I rolled down the window slowly. Where did you get that? I asked. The girl tilted her head. We're learning you, she said. Then she set the walkie-talkie down and walked away, vanishing into the dust. I stared at the device, and against every instinct I picked it up. The voice on the other end was Sarah, but it wasn't her. It was the version they'd built, and it was singing. Part 6. The Man Who Knows. I don't know what made me stop at that church. It was crumbling like everything else. Walls flaking, stained glass sagging, cross half melted from some unknown heat. But there was light inside. Real light. And more than that, music. Not the hum. Not the signal. A piano. Soft. Off-key. Human. I pulled the truck into the overgrown lot and stepped out slowly, crowbar in hand. The sign out front was missing half its letters. What remained read, "Surrender, I surrender." I pushed open the front doors and stepped into the last service of the world. He was sitting at the altar, playing an old upright piano with chipped keys. White hair, sharp shoulders, eyes like frostbitten steel. The room was lit by firelight, small oil lamps placed around the pews, flickering against walls covered in scribbled diagrams and torn maps. Symbols I recognized from the research base, spiral patterns, cellular divisions, neural pathways, and in the center of the wall behind him, a sketch of the thing I saw underground, the Enoch root. He looked up as I entered. "You're late," he said, fingers still gliding across the keys. "Do I know you?" I asked. He snorted. "Not yet, but you will." His name, or the name he gave me, was Laird. He said he used to be a linguist, contracted to the same project Sarah worked under back before everything fell apart, before the signal started waking people up and hollowing them out. They thought it was just a frequency, he told me, handing me a cup of lukewarm coffee. Just noise. But the ones who came before us, the first receivers, they knew better. I frowned. Who? He tapped one of the pages nailed to the wall. A torn journal entry. "The root is not infection. The root is invitation." Laird sipped from his mug. "It's not trying to kill us, Jonah. That would be easier. Cleaner. No, what it wants is far worse." I looked around the church. Maps showed dots spreading outward from the research base, not just through the US but Europe, Asia, the poles. Even deep-sea cables were marked with red circles. "How's it spreading?" I asked. He smiled grimly. "Language, thought, pattern." He reached for a piece of chalk and drew a spiral on the floor. "This is how it grows. Not like a virus, but like a faith. It begins as a whisper, then a sound, then a compulsion, then..." He stopped. "Then it lives inside you." I told him what had happened. About Sarah. About the underground. About the note, "If you forget her, you lose." He listened, nodded slowly. "That's why you're still here," he said. "That's why it hasn't taken full control yet. It can't mimic real love. It can copy gestures, memory, face, but not truth." He pointed to my chest. "That grief you carry? That's the firewall." I felt tears sting my eyes. First time I'd cried since this began. He let the silence sit for a while. Then he asked, "Have you started forgetting yet?" I nodded. He looked down at his hands. "Me too." That night, we sat by the fire in silence while the world hummed outside the broken windows. At some point, Laird handed me a notebook. Inside were his theories, pages filled with sketches of root systems overlaying neural scans, drawings of the Enoch root branching not just through soil, but through minds. It doesn't arrive. It awakens. It has no form. It wears ours. Its purpose: preservation through occupation, memory as vessel, identity as seedbed. I flipped through a few more pages, then stopped. There, stapled to the last page, was a photograph. Sarah. Not the one I remembered. The other one, the copy. Eyes glowing faintly, face too symmetrical. And in the background, out of focus, I saw myself, smiling. "Where did you get this?" I asked, voice shaking. Laird didn't answer. He was staring into the fire, mouth slightly open, eyes unblinking. The mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the stone floor. "Laird?" I said, standing. He didn't move. His lips began to part, and from his throat came a sound I recognized too well. The hum. I ran, out of the church, into the night. The stars above me pulsed in rhythm. The dust on the ground crawled toward my feet, and in my chest I could feel my heart sinking, no longer with me, but with it. Part 7, Crawling Truths. I didn't stop running until I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, and still the hum was inside me, not just behind my ears now, within my thoughts, like an overlay to everything I did, everything I remembered. I found shelter in the hollow of a collapsed grain silo, the steel ribs twisted upward like broken fingers. I curled against the cold, clutching Sarah's torn note. If you forget her, you lose. But it was already slipping. Her voice, her laugh. What did she smell like? Mint? Vanilla? Earth after rain? I didn't know anymore. And for the first time, I felt something worse than fear. I felt peace. I woke up just before dawn. My shirt was soaked through with sweat. My skin crawled with something that wasn't quite movement, more like anticipation. I sat up and stared at my hands. Not blistered, not split, but smooth. Too smooth. My fingerprints were gone. I stumbled to the edge of the silo and used a cracked shard of glass as a mirror. What I saw wasn't wrong, but it wasn't me. My face looked younger, skin clearer, no scar above my left brow, eyes still green but colder, like someone trying to remember how to smile. I smashed the glass and screamed, and then a thought, not mine, whispered inside. Let go. It's easier. I walked for hours, through ghost towns, over cracked highways, past fields where corn grew in spirals. Every person I passed was silent, swaying. Some cried blood, some sang softly, some simply stared into the sky like they were waiting for it to open. But none of them were screaming anymore. That's what scared me most. Not the monsters, not the signal, the silence. Like the world had accepted it. At sunset, I found an old roadside motel. The kind with flickering neon, sun-bleached furniture, and vending machines full of dust. I broke into room 7, collapsed on the bed, and that's when I saw it. A mirror across from me. My reflection didn't blink. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. Then it blinked. Once, slowly. Out of sync with me, and then it smiled. Jonah, it said, lips moving. You've done so well. I backed away, heart pounding. No, I'm not. You never left the facility, it whispered. You never escaped the route. You are already the message. I turned and ran into the bathroom, slammed the door, and splashed my face with water. It didn't feel cold. It didn't feel real. I looked at the mirror above the sink, different from the other, cracked, rusted. My reflection looked scared, broken, still me, for now. That's when I heard the knock, not on the door, from inside the mirror. 3 soft taps. I reached out, shaking, and touched the glass. The surface rippled, and I saw her, Sarah, but not dead, not glowing, not perfect, the real one. Eyes tired, cheeks streaked with tears, whispering something I couldn't hear. I pressed my forehead to the mirror and mouthed, I'm sorry. And for a moment she smiled. She held up a piece of paper. 6 words. They didn't take you yet. I don't know how long I stayed there. Eventually the lights in the room faded. Not all at once, but like they were being swallowed pixel by pixel, by something unseen. When I stepped outside, the stars had changed again. No constellations, just one great spiral. A galaxy rearranged into an eye, and it was looking down. No. I walked until my feet bled, until the road ended in dirt, until the dirt ended in ash, until the ash ended in roots. And then I saw it, the crater, where the Enoch root had first emerged, no longer hidden, now exposed, an open maw of flesh and light, pulsing with memory, and around it, figures, hundreds, maybe thousands, all staring upward, all humming, and at the center, waiting like a bride at the altar, was her, not Sarah, but the one wearing her skin. Welcome home, she said, and then my knees buckled, and everything turned white. Part 8. The reflection of what's left. There was no ceremony, no chanting, No flames, no shrieking sky, just silence. And the spiral in the dirt, the spiral in the stars, the spiral beneath my skin. Sarah, or whatever now wore her name, stood at the center, arms open like an offering. "This is the end," she said, "but not your end." I tried to speak. Nothing came out. Tried to move. My limbs wouldn't obey. I wasn't paralyzed. I just forgot how. The crater pulsed. No longer a hole, now a root system of blood and memory and signal, stretching across the earth like veins on a decaying body. And it was reaching up, not to devour, to merge. She stepped toward me, barefoot, eyes soft. "I know what you're afraid of," she said. "You think becoming something else means losing what you were. But Jonah, nothing stays." She pressed her palm to my chest. "You can still carry her with you. Let us take the weight." I closed my eyes. Inside my head, a voice, my voice, began reciting things I thought I'd forgotten. My mother's humming, the taste of snow on my tongue at age 6, the first time I touched Sarah's hand, the sound of her laugh when I got museum trivia wrong. These weren't memories, they were anchors, and they were breaking, one by one, until all that was left was a single name: Jonah. I opened my eyes. "I'm not ready," I whispered. She smiled, not cruelly, not even sadly. "Readiness is irrelevant." And then she stepped back. The others closed in, their faces calm, familiar, peaceful. Some wore lab coats, some wore wedding rings, some wore their own faces. The root reached up from the crater and wrapped around my legs. It didn't burn, it welcomed. And in that moment I understood what Laird meant. It didn't invade, it replaced, not like a parasite, like a rewrite, a new draft of the human story. I saw Sarah again, the real one, in a flicker of static, trapped in some fragment of memory. She was reaching for me through a mirror I couldn't break, mouthing something. I couldn't hear her, but I remembered the note. "If you forget her, you lose." So I clung to it. I held her face in my thoughts like fire cupped in trembling hands. The spiral screamed. The root recoiled. The light turned black, and I fell. I woke in the truck, alone, mouth dry, skin warm, blood dried at my temples. The road was intact, the sky normal. One moon, familiar stars. I blinked, then blinked again, and cried. It was over, wasn't it? I drove for hours. No signs of life, but no signs of death either. The signal was gone, or buried, somewhere in me, waiting, watching. I stopped at a gas station and saw my reflection in the window. Still me, but behind my eyes, something stirred. I record this now as a warning, maybe a confession. If you're hearing this, you survived the first wave. But listen closely. It doesn't come through blood or bites. It comes through remembrance, through understanding. It crawls in when you believe, when you feel. So if you ever find yourself staring too long at static, if you ever wake up with memories that don't quite belong, if you hear a hum when there's no sound, don't listen, don't join. Hold on to the one thing that matters, the one thing they can't take, even if it's fading, even if it hurts, even if it's already too late, because beneath their skin, there's nothing, and soon they'll come looking for yours.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.